Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And this is the first installment of this special series we are calling Podcasting in Place. We're here today in the Communications Hub, Communications exhibit at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. And today, I'm privileged to be in conversation with three guests. First up, we have Graduate Program Director of Community Leadership at the University of Baltimore County. Please welcome Dr. Sally J. Scott. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Next up, we have the director of the Shriver Peace Worker Program, affiliate faculty, Legal Literacy and Culture, advisor and instructor, community leadership at UMBC as well. Please welcome Dr. Joby Taylor. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rob. It's really nice to be here.
Likewise. Thank you for coming here. And lastly, but not least, we have a creative cultural organizer with over a decade of experience in program design, environmental advocacy, strategic partnerships, and the director of events and programs at Waterfront Partnership. Please welcome Leanna Wetmore. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for including me.
So now that I got all of that out of the way, we're done, guys. Everybody get out. But again, thank you all for coming down and making the time today to be a part of this inaugural, this maiden voyage, as it were. And we're off the water, so that works really well, right? So to start off, I'd like to do that sort of introductory origin story sort of question. Could you give us a bit of your background, a brief overview of your background, and some of those pivotal moments that shape what you're doing today, shape the work that you're doing today? You can start off here with you, Sally.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, well, there's a lot of history there, but I want to focus in on those pivotal moments, as you suggested. So I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, southeastern Pennsylvania, in a pretty privileged, pretty white world. But it was also a time of great social and economic ferment. We're talking late 60s and 70s. And I think I always knew there was something beyond what I was experiencing, and kind of started to understand that better in college, with courses in American Study, Literature, and History. But really what I think really opened the door for me was going into the Peace Corps. I was in Senegal, West Africa, and had kind of this phenomenal experience of living in a village of 300 people, learning the language and culture and feeling very welcomed there. And I think that exposure to community organizing, to cross-cultural relationships, and doing things together with people that ostensibly are very different than me, but finding common ground there. And I think that really shaped the rest of my career, which focused on community development, initially internationally and then domestically. I ended up working for many years in Baltimore, housing, affordable housing, community development, and spent a few years in the Midwest as well. And then had the great good fortune of very recently getting the position as director of the Community Leadership Program at UMBC, a position and a program that Joby and others created at UMBC, where there's that fusion of my kind of love of community and engagement with community, but also with the academic study and the helping people who are just entering the field kind of discover their passions. And the link with creativity for me is I think creativity is at the heart of any good community relationship or program. Yeah. You're always trying to imagine relationships, projects, worlds that don't exist yet. And to do that, you've got to kind of draw on those creative powers. And for me, it's often a collective process. I'm not the individual artist in the studio, but I love being creative with other people. And this program really gives me a chance to do that and to meet people like Leanna and others at Waterfront Partnership, Baltimore by Baltimore, and just to see Baltimore's level of creativity, which is over the top. It's fantastic.
Thank you. We definitely have more creativity questions coming up, but thank you for that introduction. Joby?
Yeah, well, it's dangerous to ask those origin questions in a 30-minute podcast, Robert. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, Miami, Oklahoma, and I think I continue to kind of, when I go home, keep, peeling back the layers of that experience. So I guess the one thing you should know about Miami, Oklahoma is that it has 9 sovereign nations located in my hometown. So kind of grew up immersed in a blending of kind of settler culture and relocated American Indian nations, and that my whole experience there was kind of blended, and that's both a personal and ongoing kind of story. So I think early interest in kind of just intercultural and cross-cultural exploring and those kind of what's universal about our human experience and what's different and unique. Some of those for me came in the form of like spiritual philosophical questions. So I studied philosophy and religious studies for a while. I was a seminarian at a Benedictine monastery and kind of went to a farm in Missouri and lived with the Benedictines for a couple of years, and that's still very formative. Actually, maybe ironically, that's where my love of like interfaith and intercultural dialogue really took off, and pursuit of kind of questions rather as much as answers as kind of what drove me. I also served in the Peace Corps and lived in Gabon, Central Africa for that time, and just you can imagine more of the kind of culture goes all the way down, I have no idea what just is happening here, but I'm just in the mix, but developing, this confidence that we can forge deep and meaningful relationships across all kinds of differences, even differences that feel completely mysterious or kind of uncharted. So that's also a deep part of me. Coming to Baltimore really was thinking about how education can really happen in the doing, happen through community collaborations and place-based experiences and service collaborations, and how learning can be infused into that, as well as trying to impact change and also conservation of community stories and things. So that's really what brings me here, and I've been in Baltimore since the late 90s, and cities were new to me at that point. So I think I would say cities, from that first moment, it's just like, what is a city? That continues to be something that drives me to explore kind of personally, as I've lived and worked in Baltimore for going on 25 years now. And that's come to, a lot of teaching experiences and just constant exploration here. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I was not in the Peace Corps, but I always wanted to be. I moved to Baltimore in 1997 to go to college at the Maryland Institute. So my background is fine art. But just under 10 years of being in Baltimore, I decided it would be a great idea to buy a house in a strong but undervalued community at the time through the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative. Mm-hmm. So I sort of got my first taste of what that could be like. Fixing up a house, I imagined this a very romantic, creative process, but it was a very long process that was wonderful. But what was really pivotal for me was that I started to become really involved in my community and understand what a community association is and what it can do, and meet a lot of elders in the neighborhood and learn. I just learned so much after only being in Baltimore for 10 years at that time, and I was still young at 27. Volunteering in my neighborhood and being on the community board and just kind of establishing a sense of place and a sense of community after a really long time of not having that in a bigger city. I think that was a pivotal moment. How do I continue to create community and connect to my neighbors? And so combining the art background with this passion for community engagement and volunteerism, I wanted to work as a community organizer, and I just sort of got completely thrown in the deep end with no actual training, and so that was pivotal too. I think learn by doing. I think you said, Sally, or just so I organized in the Bella Edison community for about 4 years, and really all over East Baltimore for just over. Well, I'm still organizing in East Baltimore, so it'll be about 15 years, and using art as a tool for organizing. So, bringing people together by doing a mural or a garden project or a community sculpture. So I think art is just a powerful catalyst for engaging people and then having people experience something together. That's a really moving and memorable time. So that steered me.
Wow, thank you all. And I think it's really funny. It's like it answered the first 2.5 questions. so thank you. Yeah, it works. It works, making my job easier. So I want to, in a very brief sense, get a sense from each of you. How do you define creativity and how perhaps it connects to community leadership? Each one of you kind of touched on that a little bit in your introductory, but I really want to be concrete on that.
Want me to start?
Please.
To start off. Yeah, I think I started touching on the kind of collective nature of creativity for me, that, when I think about what is the purpose of say, our program, our community our community leadership program, or, the kind of community organizing that I think we've all done as part of our careers. And it's really to both understand and change the status quo. Right? Something's not quite right. There's an opportunity for change. And so for me, creativity comes into play by, being able to first fully, put oneself in the shoes of another and understand kind of what is going on in the situation, but then in kind of collectively being able to think about, well, what are other, how could this be different, right? And, we're all familiar with that kind of planning, strategizing process, but sometimes I think we underestimate how critical creativity, deep creativity is to that. And there's, I think it works best when, we can be kind of free and trusting and playful about it, right? When we don't get bogged down in this, this is, we're deciding the future, but just let ourselves think and experiment and roll with it and kind of see where we end up. So I think it's really, to me, very much rooted in those bonds of trust between people that you have to kind of build almost before you can get to the fully creative part of community change.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I really think when it comes to imagination, particularly, this and creativity, my deep experience and senses, these are very fundamental human attributes. It's what really defines us in many ways, is ability to juxtapose things in new ways. I mean, every time we open our mouths, we're speaking a sentence that's very likely never been spoken in that exact way before. So most of my thought in terms of education and stuff has been that everyone's a creative, everyone's deeply imaginative at their core, and in some ways we got to unlearn this professionalizing of creativity or imagination only belongs to poets and artists, and this kind of professionalized tracking. And we're doing it all the time, and if we can try to both see it as a practice that we can cultivate, as well as something that we, instead of separating who is and who isn't, that we kind of embrace it in ourselves. So I kind of think every day I have to have outlets, whether it's cooking for my family or prepping lesson plans or, moving around the city and trying to understand complex things. Our minds work in metaphors. So understanding that this is happening all the time, embracing it, finding our own ways of expressing and outletting that. But I really think part of it, the educational goal of mine, and really as a member of the Baltimore City, is to say, let's learn how to flex our imaginations in everyday life, the way we see ourselves and the way we see the people around us.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well said, to both of you. I think I would just add to that. I think being creative, right, is giving permission to take some risks and try some new things. And I think creatives are sometimes really exceptional at taking those risks. There's nothing scarier than a blank canvas, right? And just jumping into it, or and I think of the community work piece and creating those again, like for me, it's like building the relationships to be able to trust and to take some of those chances. So doing something together, and it could be anything as simple as putting a plant in the ground or a building a painting together.
That's great. Thank you. That's good. It's good. See, this is going well. This is going well. So, so I want to shift into how I guess how we all are connected in a way here, right? I want to talk about BXB a little bit for those who aren't in the know. I want to talk about Baltimore by Baltimore. So, could you describe Baltimore by Baltimore? I want to start off with you, Sally. Describe Baltimore by Baltimore. Like, what was the thinking like behind the festival, and ultimately, how did UMBC Waterfront? How did everything come together?
Well, I would love to have Leanna start us off, if
Yes,
that's
please,
okay.
please. Yes.
Just because
Let's reverse it.
she's really at the origin story of this. I would say.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. I think, just to back up a little tiny bit too, with that experience as the organizer, I think I had this opportunity to change jobs a little bit within Waterfront Partnership at a very instrumental time. This time that, Sally and Joby, you wrote this paper, Reimagining Baltimore, and I hope I'm sure you'll talk on that later, but I was offered this job as events director at the same time, thinking about what could the harbor be, how can we reimagine the Inner Harbor? At the same time, there is a new developer at Harbor Place Pavilions, and I think years ago I may not have been so engaged in this issue at the harbor, but I think I've grown to think that it's really a reflection of our city itself, and there's an opportunity to use some of these community organizing principles and activities and community leaders in this larger process. And I think Baltimore by Baltimore was born out of using this producer model, like in communities we call it train the trainer, or this idea that we're passing the mic to a community leader or artist, professional, neighbor, one of our neighbors, and ask, what do you want to do? What do you think would make this better? And so the model, B by B, it's a series of 6 music and makers festivals that go from June to November, and each one is sort of curated by a different producer that showcases the best talent in their network through their eyes. So the idea is that we can truly reflect Baltimore back at itself at the Inner Harbor, and that's the vision for me for Baltimore by Baltimore.
The brilliance, I think, of the Baltimore by Baltimore model, Leanna, is just this trust to basically have Waterfront Partnership say, we'll take care of the infrastructure, where the stage is and where, the tables and posters, but it's a huge faith walk with Baltimore. To say like this city is has genius and treasures and talent, and that's under elevated, and that if we it's kind of like call put the call out and allow people to really lean into trusting in that space and filling it with those creative expressions. And I just think it was every weekend was a unique kind of celebratory example of the diversity, the rich layers, the hard work, the skill level, all of that, kind of from entrepreneurs to makers to performers. So I think it really, really illustrated that trust and kind of decentralizing, like what can happen in that space was really validated, and it kind of just was an almost embarrassing riches of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the paper that Joby and I worked on. I felt like Baltimore by Baltimore really embodied and expressed, a lot of those principles, in that we wrote an op-ed piece, right, in 2021, and then got all this reaction to it, and then incorporated a lot of those opinions and ideas and creativity into the paper that came out in January last year. And so, you know, it's this trusting and believing that there's all this, you know, intelligence and creativity and ability out there in the community, and you know, we tried to bring it into our paper, but you actually made it, you know, you made it happen in a physical way, in space and time. And every show there was, you know, a number of acts that blew me away. I mean, I've never been to a whole series of events in Baltimore that had that level of talent, you know, and it's the opposite of going to, you know, see some big star that you already know. Right. It's seeing people that you've never heard of, you never suspected, and just making, it's almost more exciting than seeing something you already expect to be great, because you're just surprised and amazed by it.
That's great. That is great. And being able to attend, be there, observe, and, you know, get on the stage. I got on the stage. I was dragged on the stage. All of my frame was dragged on the stage. And it's like, hey, we're going to do an impromptu podcast. I was like, oh, this is a very Baltimore moment we're having right now. Exactly. But it felt authentic. You know, that's the thing that really stuck out about it overall for me. And being there, seeing people that I know. And as you were touching on, I think there, where it's folks like that I don't know well, but it's like I want to have that invitation to learn more about their work and what they're doing. I'm a coffee snob, and I went over there, and it's like this coffee truck that was there, and I was like, who are you? What do you do? What is this about? And we exchanged cards, and I've tried this coffee, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I wouldn't have had that experience. Maybe I would have eventually found them on social media, but, you know, being able to go down there and go to sort of, you know, the waterfront area to the inner harbor, and be able to see all of these interesting people doing and having a lot of fun, it just felt like an authentic experience. So in being down, and this is just kind of up for grabs, you know, like if you watch like basketball and you see like the tip off at the beginning, it's that. So since it's, you know, taking place down there in the inner harbor, and it's a tourist area, high traffic area, lots of different people, and you know, it's going to be during the baseball season. It was last year during the baseball season. So it was a lot of different people there. Let's talk about the harbor's future, and in what ways like can BXB and creative thinking, Baltimore by Baltimore, and creative thinking and practices, you know, source from Baltimore, like the people that are of Baltimore that are kind of like doing a lot of this programming and supporting a lot of this programming. How can that influence like the harbor's like redevelopment, this reimagining?
Well, speaking of basketball, I think we got to get Angel Reese down. She's such a remarkable person and player. Well, I'll kick it off, and I think Joby and Leanna have a lot to add, but I've been working with a group of other programs that provide training for entrepreneurs and leaders in Baltimore, and we have got such an ecosystem supporting social entrepreneurship in the city. Yeah. And you know, you'll see bits and pieces of it here and there. But if we were able to bring those folks, you know, those who have businesses, services that were to be appropriate down at the harbor, really connect up this work that's going on all over the city, serving a lot of different folks and you know, drawing on a lot of different talents, and have that be part of the harbor's future. Not, you know, the big chain stores that just tend over time to seem to kind of lose energy and not really add to the local economy or the local culture. So that's a piece of it that I think a lot about, and am hoping that as the new developer and, you know, all the folks working with him at city and state, you know, are prioritizing what should happen here. A priority should be supporting local entrepreneurs, specifically social entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. I think to your earlier question about creativity and imagination, you know, I really do believe that, you know, Baltimore exists differently in all of our imaginations. It's been reimagined a number of times in its history in like transformative ways, and all the signs, if you're standing on Fed Hill or you're walking out, all the signs are really that this is a generational moment. And that when you think about the buildings that have emptied out down around the harbor and the way the skyline has shifted to the east, and the really formative kind of uprisings around social equity and anti-racism and things in the city with its past, that this is a transformational moment that I wouldn't even say it's a generational moment. It's at least back to the 60s and 70s when the highways were stopped and the urban, and then the harbor became port to harbor. So we're in a moment like that. And what I would like to, kind of my mantra is that it's not just a rare moment in terms of timing, but that it's kind of a crucible moment. It's a moment where we can either, just perpetuate those kind of divisions and hierarchies and not really address, the restorative needs that we have for the city, the opportunity to bring all our communities in. We can just build new buildings and kind of move into a next moment for Baltimore. But so it's a crucible moment in the sense I think it's like test our mettle, like can we lean in to the values and ethical aspects of what it means to think of Baltimore as people, as opposed to buildings, as opposed to development in an abstract kind of design way. So I think Baltimore by Baltimore was like a great festival series, but the reason it ought to be centered is that it really illustrates the kind of process that it has those values of authenticity, of local generative economies, of embracing diversity and belonging in kind of really inclusive way. It has those infused into it. So if we can kind of think about how what we do in that space can lead all of those kind of entrepreneurial ventures and social entrepreneurial and learning and restorative, then I think that feels to me like the key. Can we lean in and let that happen from a values-driven, people-centered way? And so I don't know what the what'll be. I mean, I hope it has less highways downtown, and I hope it has easier access and certain things like that. But I'm wide open to what it could be as long as it's values-driven. That's what I'd love to see as a Baltimorean.
Same. I mean, I 100% agree with that. The restorative opportunity, values-driven, the process including more than just developers and, thinking of community stakeholders, East and West Baltimore. I think of, we know that the Inner Harbor is a place where tourists come to, right? That, like, if you haven't never visited Baltimore, so I think it's important that even from a tourist angle, like you want to go to a city to see its authentic self. You want to see what's made there, what's cool there, how people dress there, like what's the music, And I think that in order to be cool, it needs to reflect Baltimore. It needs to have pride in order for it to reflect and connect to community. Community has to feel pride and like they've been involved in the work and the decisions and the process. So, it just all has to happen at the same time in order to be what we want it to be. And then I think there's a lot of people on the fringe, like who maybe live in the in the areas around Baltimore City who like might come back, like that local tourists or that regional tourists. I think that there's a lot that we could do there for Baltimore's economy is to get them back coming and feeling good and welcome and safe and like it's the cool spot to be. After every B by B, I would go home and just spend hours looking up new music and new vintage sellers, and I mean it was just endless the amount of good stuff.
Yeah, I can say from I guess being an evangelist for Baltimore, whenever I go traveling, whether it's up to Philly, New Orleans, I'll be back there soon. I definitely talk to people talking about all of the stuff that happens there because it's not a lot of information. So when I go down there to, let's say, New Orleans, and this year alone, I was down there in January, I had 4 people come up just based on conversations they had with me. And he was like, yeah, I'm visiting BMO. And I was like, don't call it that. But, they said they were going to visit, and, we're able to, go to different businesses, check out different places here and get a real true sense of it. And I think going back to sort of the notion about authenticity, if you're going to a place, you want to see who are the people there. I'm hearing that these are the demographics of the place. I don't really see that. Well, Baltimore by Baltimore really did have that, and I think that that's something that's really, really cool. I have a follow-up question for Leanna, though. For those who are undipped, could you give a few examples of some of the programming? Yeah.
Sure. So our producers last year, we worked with Terrell Brown of the Artist Navigator Network. So he's really great at like plugging into emerging and professional artists into a larger series. So it was great to work with him and help. He's sort of recommended different leaders to pull in, and he led us to Big Fred, who is a comedian, and he does this amazing work in schools, working with youth and using humor sort of as a way to process. And he's such a positive, just amazing MC and fun guy. He brought in Black Star and different artists that really just, you could feel the vibe of the harbor, just alive. Led from Fred into Keith Colston, who is a native, he's a tribesman who did this amazing performance in traditional dance with traditional regalia and mixed African drumming in with the native drumming, and it was just this whole it felt like a heartbeat. And really, he talked a lot about how different cultures connect through our music. That was a really special moment. Lady Brian with the Black Arts District was incredible. This year we have, well, actually, it's there's some good surprises that will be coming right up, but also a lot that will reflect back of the different cultures in Baltimore. Latin heritage will be a sneak peek, and some jazz perhaps, which is very exciting. Baltimore has a historic, important jazz scene, so just glossing over that a little bit.
Like that. It's called a teaser. No. But yeah, thank you. And I can definitely attest. That's who pulled me on stage. It was a combination of Fred and Larry. What up? Like, yeah, Rob, you got to go up there. You're interviewing Larry. I mean, you're interviewing Fred right now. I was like, I've barely met him. I was like, I need more prep for this. But definitely both of them actually just really cool MCs. When I was over there trying to set up and do podcasts at, I think it was one of the latter ones, maybe in the next to last event. I'm over there and I'm like, I have my gear, I'm trying to do, and I was like, there's club music happening. I can't get an interview with this. And Larry comes over there. He's like, Rob Lee over here. And I was like, what are we doing? I was like, why are you just like DJ radio micing me right now? But it just was a really cool scene, and seeing kind of people shake it up to some club music that was playing in the background. I was like, this is not expected.
I wanted to mention the dancing, because that was really a way for everybody there who wanted to participate in it. And there were some just incredible dancers who showed up, time and time again. And I just like came to anticipate them and want to see them again. But then anybody who wanted to could jump in, the little kids with the hula hoops that you guys provided. So it had that very, that very participatory, welcoming hometown feel to it. At the same time, you're seeing, some really, national, international talent.
And I saw meeting Keith Colston, and who's a Lumbee, citizen, and realizing through works like Ashley Minner and other local folks who have begun to tell the story of Native American history and migration and stuff here in Baltimore. And I'm having those dances. I mean, I grew up in Northeast Oklahoma, and, dance powwow circuit when I was like, there were Oklahoma dancers, right there on the harbor corner. And the combination, one of feeling like a sense of belonging and connection, but also the sense of like, I don't know that this kind of moment has happened here before, like because this kind of pulling in, you can't ever be really comprehensive. How many years of B would it take to be culturally comprehensive of the diversity that makes up who we are, but still bringing in communities and people who help really turn that story into a more and more rich tapestry, and give the mic. Yeah, he told powerful stories that day.
That's great.
I forgot to mention Media Rhythm Institute. That were just that was one of my favorite shows as well. They do a lot of work with youth media, and they had these the bad dancers, the ballerinas, were just incredible to see. That whole day was just one after the next of all stars.
Right on the paver stones there. This elegant.
That's great.
Beautiful.
So I have one more real question, and of course, it's not a Truth in SR podcast without the rapid fire questions. So I got some of those as well. But so this last one, we often hear about impact, right? And I want to add this extra layer of context to it. I'm really into pop culture. I like movies, right? And you'll see a movie, it's like, man, that movie was really good. It's really great. And then it's like, we're not doing a sequel because it didn't make $2 billion. And they say, well, that's the impact, but it has cultural significance. So in sort of this lens of events and events around the community and for the community and of the community, how would you define impact as it relates to Baltimore by Baltimore?
Well, we did survey folks who were coming through with a lot of help from our students and Waterfront Partnership and others. And so I think what part of the impact that we saw on the people who were attending first was just this sense of joy and surprise, like this was happening, right? Because the harbor's been, felt like things weren't going so well for a while. So to see all these people and this energy and this talent come together was phenomenal. And a lot of people had not planned to be there. Yeah. They were just, like you said, there's baseball games, people walking by, they live nearby. By chance, they come across this thing and they are, wonderfully surprised by it. And I think I think just pulling people in and that experience being a rewarding one was, to me, one of the greatest impacts that we saw.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree with that. I think I'm in this fundraising, whirlwind right now for B2B, and I think, at the end of the day, we are one important part is that we're paying the producer, we're paying the artist, and the artists pay their talent, and so we need to raise a good amount of money for that. And I think one success is raising the money, right, and covering the costs, and then wouldn't it be great if even we raised the money for the event and then also had some extra to do some more programming around, or so I think that is a measure beyond just seeing people feel attached and again more pride for the Inner Harbor and this iconic, Baltimore's most iconic outdoor stage. It really is this beautiful place.
I mean, I mostly think that we really got to have a long game, play a long game here. It can't just be how many people were there on such and such a day. And, when you're really trying to do or hoping for more transformative change that involves core values and process of community engagement, and these are things that, you can't just do in that way. So, it means understanding what those values are, setting processes in place, trusting stories that come out. And I think some of those pieces probably won't be evidence-based in a traditional, we just really authenticity, for example. Maybe we can measure that, but it's whether it's a question or not. We shouldn't necessarily put every value up to the impact evidence question. Some of them is we got to push some chips in on restorative inclusion of communities. We got to push some chips in on authentic cultural expressions. So that didn't really answer your question, except I'd say we got to somehow develop some trust in a long vision and the values that are driving it.
And I think you did. Long game. That's the thing that stuck out to me. So I like the extra background. So that's kind of it for the real podcast. Now it's going to get weird. I'll be honest when I say that. We're
Weird is good. We're good.
don't overthink the questions. Don't overthink. And it's kind of this sort of I said what I said. It's like no take backsies, as it were. So here's the first one. We're gonna go from Sally to Leanna. So here's the first one. If you could only select one topping on your pizza, what is it?
Mushroom.
Let's go.
I love cheese. Gotta have it.
I mean, mushrooms and cheese. How do you go wrong? Third, green peppers.
Oh, yeah. We put our pizzas together now.
That's almost like a Supreme, right?
Yeah, close.
Next one. What is your most often used emoji?
I like the one, the smile with the sunglasses.
It's the cool emoji, I think. That's what pops up. Yeah.
Actually, the sunglass emoji. I'd like to choose something different, but
we've worked
my
together
kids would
too
certainly
much.
say it. Yeah, hitting it all the time.
I am all about the hard eyes emoji.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
If you were to have one superpower for 24 hours, what would it be? They're getting harder, by the way.
I think for me, flying. I love birds. I love watching them fly. I'd love to be up there with them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go underwater with the flying. I would love to be able to. I'm a swimmer for just exercise and things, but I would love to be able to move under the water. Yeah.
I would like to see into the future.
Wow.
I know it could be scary.
Yeah.
It could be scary. May regret that.
And here's the very last one. Since we're coming up on it, and to tie it all together with Baltimore by Baltimore, it's a big summertime oriented. It's, people outside. What is your favorite summertime activity? You can use that accent from earlier, by the way.
Well, it doesn't. I love swimming in a particular lake. That's it. It just the water's so beautiful, the setting, and that just feels perfect to me.
Since basically at the beginning of COVID, I got a little kayak and started re-seeing Baltimore from the water. So I love putting in across it like Middle Branch and that mix of industrial areas and natural areas. So I'm getting on the water with my little kayak.
Yes, Baltimore Blueway coming our way.
Come on.
I love tubing in the gunpowder.
Cool.
Tubing is really my little walk a little bit up the NCR trail and tube down.
So it's water is a theme I'm hearing.
Yeah, like the harbor itself.
So in these final moments, I want to thank you all for coming on and spending some time with me. And on this video, by the way, thank you all for clap yourselves up for coming on to the video. But shameless plugs, I guess. Anything you want to share on this final moments? Social media, website, anything along those lines?
I just love people to take a look at our community leadership program at UMBC. You've taken a course in our program. You know what we have to offer. It's a phenomenal group of people. We've brought in some great faculty, and I think whether you want to take one course, pursue a whole degree, there's a great range available to you.
So it was a great course that I took. I learned a lot. I was able to revisit some things, and the digital storytelling, it always finds something new I got out of that experience. And I think even when it being something that's more on the visual side, I was able to look at how I go about storytelling from an audio side, and now we're doing this video, but in an audio side as well. So I think it's something that, even from the critique standpoint, I just took a lot out of that course.
Wonderful.
It's great. And I've been at UMBC for 20 years now, and just really think it's also an exceptional place. And it's in a moment of really important kind of change. We got a new president at the university, and I'm very hopeful that this kind of community engaged learning and community collaboration is going to be part of UMBC's vision, both as a place where people are learning and the institution's kind of getting involved. So UMBC, the Retriever.
I would say check out Waterfront Partnership on our Instagram page. Keep an eye on what we do. I think there's a lot of exciting things coming up, from creating a water trail to increase Baltimore's public access to our inner harbor so we could get on and float around and know where to get out, to other great events that we're doing with a similar approach. One is this weekend, we'll do a series of skate days at the new Rash Field, which is a park we're really proud of, at the south side of the inner harbor, and just pairing up little younger children with pro skaters to give lessons and partner with other, skate park of Baltimore. So that same sort of process of pulling from different communities around. So keep an eye on all of the fun events coming.
Excellent.
Well, there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Sally J. Scott, Joby Taylor, and Leanna Wetmore for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying there's art, culture, creativity, community, it's everything in and around Baltimore. You've just got to look for it.
Thank you.